crown lay on table 7, glinting under the fluorescent lights of the Paradise Diner, right where a $2 tip should have been. Delilah Chen froze mid-step, the coffee pot trembling in her hand. She'd served hundreds of customers through these long night shifts, scraped together tips that barely covered her brother's medical bills, and never once had anyone left behind anything more valuable than a 20. This was different. This was impossible. The metal gleamed pale as moonlight, worked into spirals and points that seemed to drink in the ugly diner lighting and transform it into something older, something that belonged in museums or fairy tales. Her regular had been sitting there just moments ago. The man who came in every night at 2 in the morning, always taking the corner booth, always ordering black coffee he never drank. She'd started bringing him bread 3 weeks back. Fresh rolls from the kitchen, warm and soft, because he looked so damn lonely sitting there in his expensive black coat, staring out the window like he was watching for something that would never come. He never ate the bread either, but he always touched it, fingertips grazing the crust, and something in his pale face would soften just slightly. Now he was gone, and the crown sat in his place. Delilah set down the coffee pot with shaking hands and reached for the crown. Heavy, real. Cold metal that warmed slowly against her palms, intricate beyond anything she'd seen outside of history books. Rubies clustered at the 4 cardinal points, deep red as old blood. The inside was engraved with words in a language she didn't recognize, flowing script that seemed to shift when she tried to focus on it. "D, you gonna clean that table or stare at it all night?" Marcus called from behind the grill. She grabbed the crown and shoved it into her apron, heart hammering. "Yeah, sorry. Lost in thought." The weight pulled at her waist as she finished her shift. She kept touching it through the fabric, making sure it was real, that she hadn't imagined the whole thing. When she finally stumbled into her tiny apartment at dawn, she pulled it out and set it on her kitchen table. It looked even more out of place here, surrounded by her second-hand furniture and the stack of medical bills she'd been avoiding. The crown belonged in a castle on the head of someone important, not in a cramped studio that smelled like the Chinese restaurant downstairs. She should probably call the police, turn it in as lost property. Instead, she picked up her phone and did something stupid. She took a picture and ran it through an image search. The results made her sit down hard. Crown of Hail, Vampire Court, Ancient Ruler, Current Whereabouts Unknown. She clicked through link after link, each more impossible than the last. Forums dedicated to vampire sightings, blurry photographs of pale figures in shadows, serious academic articles about the hidden society that supposedly controlled half the world's old money. Most people dismissed it as conspiracy theory, urban legend, the kind of thing bored people obsessed over on the internet. But Delilah had touched that crown. She'd felt its weight, its age, its power, and she'd served its owner warm bread every night for 3 weeks. She didn't sleep. She sat at her table, staring at the crown, trying to make sense of it. Her regular customer was a vampire king if the internet was right, and he'd left her his crown like it was pocket change. When night fell again and her shift started, she wrapped the crown carefully in a dish towel and brought it with her. She tucked it into her locker in the back room, then took her place on the floor. 2 a.m. came and went, and table 7 stayed empty. He didn't come the next night either, or the night after that. Delilah found herself watching the door obsessively, jumping every time the bell chimed. Marcus noticed, started making comments about her being even more distracted than usual. She couldn't explain. Couldn't tell him that she was waiting for a vampire king who'd abandoned his crown in her section. On the 4th night, she made a decision. She asked Marcus to cover for her during her break, then went into the back room and unwrapped the crown. The address from the internet searches had mentioned an estate on the north side of the city. Old Money District, the kind of place where security gates kept people like her firmly outside. She had to try. The bus ride took an hour. She stood the whole way, the crown wrapped and clutched against her chest. Other passengers gave her strange looks, but no one asked questions. That was the beauty of a city this size. Everyone was too wrapped up in their own weirdness to care about yours. The estate loomed behind iron gates, all Gothic spires and dark windows. No lights showed. The place looked abandoned or maybe just sleeping. She walked up to the gate, suddenly aware of how ridiculous this was. She was a diner waitress in a stained uniform, carrying a crown to return to a vampire king who probably had dozens of them. She pressed the intercom button anyway. Nothing happened for a long minute. Then a voice crackled through, female and sharp. "State your business." "I need to see him. The man who comes to the Paradise Diner. I have something of his." "The king does not accept visitors." "Then tell the king that Delilah Chen is here, and if he doesn't want his crown back, I'm selling it on eBay." The intercom went silent. Delilah's heart tried to punch through her ribs. She was insane. She was threatening a vampire king. She should leave, should run, should throw the crown over the gate and let them deal with it. The gates swung open. The path to the main house cut through gardens that looked wild in the darkness, overgrown roses and ancient trees that blocked out the stars. Her footsteps sounded too loud on the gravel. By the time she reached the massive front doors, they were already opening. The woman who stood there was beautiful in a way that made Delilah's throat close up. White hair fell in a sleek curtain past her shoulders, and her skin had that same impossible pallor Delilah's regular possessed. She wore a black dress that probably cost more than Delilah's annual rent. Her eyes were ice blue and deeply unimpressed. "You have nerve, human." "I have his crown." Delilah held up the wrapped bundle. "I'm guessing he might want it back." The woman's expression shifted, something like surprise flickering across her perfect features. "He left it with you deliberately." "Yeah, well, I'm not keeping it. Where is he?" "The king is indisposed." "That's not an answer." "It is the only answer you will receive." The woman looked her up and down, and Delilah felt weighed, measured, found wanting. "Why do you care? You received a generous tip. Most humans would simply sell it and ask no questions." "I'm not most humans." Delilah met her eyes, refusing to flinch. "And he's been coming to my diner for weeks. I just want to make sure he's okay." Something in the woman's face softened, just barely. "He is not okay, but that is not your concern." "Then whose concern is it? Because he looked pretty alone every night he sat in my section." The woman studied her for another long moment. Then she stepped aside. "Follow me. But know that if you upset him further, I will ensure you regret it." The inside of the estate made the outside look restrained. Everything was old elegance, dark wood and darker paintings, the kind of wealth that didn't need to announce itself. Their footsteps echoed on marble floors. Delilah kept her grip on the crown and tried not to gawk at the tapestries, the sculptures, the casual display of centuries. They climbed a curving staircase to the second floor, then down a hallway lined with portraits. Pale faces stared down at her from the walls, all of them sharing similar features. White hair, proud expressions, eyes that seemed to follow her movement. The woman stopped at a set of double doors. "He has been here since he returned 4 nights ago. He will not speak, will not feed, will not attend to his court." She looked at Delilah. "Perhaps a human's perspective will succeed where ours has failed." She knocked once, then pushed open the doors and left. Delilah stepped inside. The room was huge and dark, heavy curtains blocking out the night. She could make out the shapes of furniture, a massive bed, shelves lined with books. And in a chair by the window, barely visible in the shadows, sat her regular customer. He didn't move when she entered, didn't acknowledge her presence at all. She walked closer, her eyes adjusting to the dimness. He looked exactly as he had in the diner, pale and beautiful and sad. He wore the same black coat. His white hair fell forward, hiding his face. "Hey," she said softly. "You forgot your crown." No response. She set the bundle on the table beside him and unwrapped it. The crown gleamed even in the darkness. "Look, I don't know what's going on, but leaving this in a diner was kind of dramatic. Someone could have stolen it, pawned it. I had to hide it in my locker for 4 days." His fingers twitched. That was all. Delilah pulled over another chair and sat down. "The woman downstairs said you won't talk. That's fine. I'm pretty good at one-sided conversations. I do it all the time at work." She studied his profile, the sharp lines of his face, the way he held himself so carefully still. "You never ate the bread, did you?" "I kept bringing it because I thought maybe you were hungry. Maybe you just needed someone to see that you existed. But you're a vampire. You can't eat regular food." He turned his head slightly. His eyes caught what little light there was, reflecting it back red gold. "My name is Hale Obsidian," he said. His voice was deeper than she remembered, rough from disuse. "I am king of the Eastern Court, 3,000 years old, and I have not felt hunger for mortal food in longer than your civilization has existed." "Okay." Delilah kept her voice steady. "Nice to officially meet you. I'm Delilah Chen. I'm 23, and I make $7.50 an hour plus tips. Why did you keep the bread?" The question seemed to catch him off guard. He blinked, and some of the careful blankness left his expression. "You gave it to me." "I gave you a lot of coffee, too. You didn't take that home?" "The coffee was part of my order. The bread was a gift." He looked away again. "No one has given me a gift without wanting something in return for longer than I can remember." Her chest ached. She thought about him sitting in her diner, night after night, touching bread he couldn't eat just because someone had offered it freely. "What did you want from the diner? Why did you keep coming?" "Silence. Simplicity. A place where no one knew what I was, where I could sit and watch normal humans live normal lives." His jaw tightened. "And then you started bringing me bread, and it became more than that. It became the only kindness I received in my entire existence." Delilah reached out and touched his hand. His skin was cold, but it warmed under her palm. He stared at their joined hands like he'd never seen such a thing. "Why did you leave the crown?" she asked. "Because I am tired." The words came out flat, drained. 3,000 years of ruling, of making decisions that cost lives, of being what my people need me to be. I wanted to walk away. The crown was the first step. And the second step? I do not know. I sat here and realized I had nowhere to go, nothing I wanted to do. I have been a king for so long that I do not know how to be anything else. The woman downstairs had mentioned his court. Delilah thought about power vacuums, about what happened when a leader disappeared. What happens if you actually walk away, if you stay here and refuse to go back? Chaos, infighting, likely civil war. He said it without inflection, like he was describing the weather. "My cousin Selvaris has been waiting for an opportunity to seize power for 200 years. Others will back him simply to avoid the alternative. The Eastern Court will tear itself apart. So people will die. Vampires will die. My people. Do you care?" She squeezed his hand. "I'm not judging. I just need to know." He was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "Yes, I care. I've always cared, and that is the burden I cannot set down. Even walking away, I know what it will cost them." Delilah looked at the crown, then back at him. "Then don't walk away. You do not understand what you are asking. Maybe not. But I understand being tired, and I understand responsibility, and I know that running away doesn't actually fix anything." She thought about her brother, about the medical bills she could never quite pay off, about wanting to quit every single shift and knowing she couldn't. If the problem is that being king makes you miserable, then change how you're king. He actually laughed, a bitter sound. Change 3,000 years of tradition, change the expectations of an entire court, change myself. Yeah, why not? Because I do not know how. Then figure it out. You're 3,000 years old. You've got to be smart enough to learn new tricks. She stood up, still holding his hand, and tugged until he rose to face her. "Come back to the diner tomorrow night. Sit in my section. Let me bring you bread you won't eat, and we'll talk about what a different kind of king might look like." Hale stared down at her. He was tall, she realized. She'd known that intellectually, but having him stand this close, looking at her with those strange eyes, made her aware of the size difference, made her aware of the fact that he was a predator and she was prey. But his hand was gentle in hers, and his expression was lost rather than dangerous. "Why do you care?" he asked. "You do not know me. You owe me nothing." "Because you looked lonely, and I know what that feels like. And because leaving your crown with me means I'm involved now, whether I want to be or not." She let go of his hand and picked up the crown. "So stop hiding and start fixing things. Your people need you. Maybe you need them too, if you can figure out how to let them be more than subjects." She held out the crown. He looked at it like it was a coiled snake. Then, slowly, he took it from her. His fingers brushed hers, cold and careful. "Tomorrow night," he said, 2 a.m. "I'll save you table 7. The woman from before appeared to escort her out. Delilah glanced back once before the doors closed and saw Hale still standing there, crown in his hands, looking at it like it was a puzzle he'd only just noticed. The walk back through the estate felt different. The portraits on the walls looked less judgmental, more curious. When they reached the front doors, the white-haired woman paused. "I am Morvana, the king's seneschal. I have served House Obsidian for 800 years. That's a long time to work for someone. It is a long time to watch him diminish." Morvana's ice-blue eyes fixed on her. "If you hurt him, I will end you. If you help him, you will have the gratitude of every vampire in the Eastern Court. I'm just a waitress who gives away free bread. You are a human who made the king feel something other than duty for the first time in centuries. That is more valuable than you know." The gates closed behind her with a hollow clang. Delilah caught the last bus back to her neighborhood and made it to the diner just as her break ended. Marcus gave her a look but didn't ask questions. She went through the motions of her shift, pouring coffee and taking orders, but her mind was elsewhere. On a king who'd forgotten how to be anything else, on a crown that weighed more than gold, on the fact that she'd just walked into vampire politics without the faintest idea what she was doing. 2 a.m. The next night came slowly. When the door finally chimed and Hale walked in, Delilah felt something settle in her chest. He looked the same as always, black coat and pale composure, but there was something different in the way he carried himself, less defeated, more purposeful. He sat at table 7. She brought him coffee and a basket of warm bread rolls. "Thank you," he said, and meant it. She slid into the seat across from him. Marcus was in the back, and the late crowd had thinned to nothing. "Okay. Talk to me. What makes you miserable about being king?" He touched one of the rolls, fingertips gentle on the golden crust. "The distance. I sit on a throne and make pronouncements, and my people bow and obey, but none of them speak to me as an equal. None of them question me or challenge me or treat me as anything other than an authority to be feared or used. What about friends? Family? Dead, most of them, or distant. Morvana is loyal, but she is also my subject. My cousin plots against me. The other nobles want favors or power, or simply want to survive." He looked up at her. "You are the first person in longer than I can recall who simply wanted to give me something." Delilah felt heat rise in her cheeks. It was just bread. It was kindness. Do not diminish that. She looked at his hands, still resting on the roll. "Keep it. Take it home. I'll bring you more tomorrow." "I cannot eat it." "I know, but you kept the others, didn't you?" His expression went soft, almost embarrassed. "I have a drawer full of bread from your diner, folded in cloth so it would not decay too quickly." The image of a 3,000-year-old vampire king carefully preserving stale bread made something flutter in her chest. That's incredibly sad and incredibly sweet. It is pathetic. It's human, which I guess is weird to say to a vampire, but you know what I mean. She leaned forward. If your court keeps you isolated, change that. Make them talk to you like a person. Set new rules. They will resist. Then make them understand why it matters. You're the king. You've got the authority. Authority is not the same as connection. No, but it's a start. She tapped the table, thinking. What if you held a different kind of court? Not all formal and distant, something where people could actually approach you. A casual court would be seen as weak, or modern, forward-thinking. A king who's strong enough to change tradition instead of hiding behind it. He stared at her. You've been mortal for 2 decades. I have ruled for millennia, and yet you see solutions I cannot. Fresh eyes, and I've been dealing with difficult customers for years. You'd be surprised how much customer service translates to politics. She grinned. Smile, nod, let them think they're being heard, then do what needs doing anyway. You are a dangerous woman, Delilah Chen. I'm a tired waitress who needs to get back to work before my boss yells at me. But she didn't move, and neither did he. They sat there in the fluorescent light of the Paradise Diner, a vampire king and a human girl, and talked about his court, about her life, about the strange space between immortal and mortal existence. He asked about her brother, about the medical bills, and she found herself telling him things she'd never told anyone, about being scared, about feeling trapped, about loving someone so much that you'd break yourself to keep them safe. I understand that, Hale said quietly. I would break myself to keep my people safe. I've been doing so for centuries. Then maybe it's time to let them help carry the weight. He took the bread when he left that night, wrapped it carefully in a napkin she provided. The tip he left was normal this time, just cash, but he met her eyes as he stood to leave. Tomorrow? He asked. I'll be here. It became routine. Every night at 2 a.m., Hale came to the diner. She brought him coffee and bread, and they talked. About his plans to reform the court, about the resistance he was facing, about the small victories and larger setbacks. He told her about Selvaris, his cousin, who was gathering support among the old families. About the faction that thought any change was weakness, about Morvana's careful maneuvering to protect him from outright rebellion. And slowly, he told her about himself, about the human life he barely remembered, 3,000 years gone, about being turned in a time when vampires were gods to mortals, feared and worshipped in equal measure, about watching the world change century after century and feeling left behind by it. Delilah listened and questioned and refused to let him wallow. When he talked about the impossibility of change, she reminded him of everything he'd already accomplished. When he slipped into old patterns of distance and formality, she called him on it. You just referred to yourself in the third person, she said one night, pointing her coffee pot at him like a weapon. Stop it. You're Hale, not the king requires or the throne demands. You. He blinked at her. Then, slowly, he repeated, I require. I demand. Better, keep practicing. 2 weeks into their nightly meetings, he asked her to visit the estate again. My court gathers in 3 days, he said. I intend to announce reforms. I would like you to be there. Delilah nearly dropped the coffee pot. Me? Why? Because you will keep me honest, and because I want my people to see what inspired the changes. I'm human. Won't that be a problem? Likely. But I'm done making decisions based on what will or will not be a problem. The confidence in his voice was new. She'd watched him grow into it over the past 2 weeks, shedding layers of exhaustion to reveal the strength underneath. He was still tired, still burdened, but he was fighting now instead of drowning. Okay, she said, but I'm wearing my work uniform. I don't own anything fancy enough for a vampire court. Wear what you like. You will be under my protection. The way he said it, calm and absolute, made warmth spread through her chest. The night of the court gathering, Morvana sent a car for her. Delilah sat in the back of the sleek black vehicle, very aware of the contrast between her diner uniform and the expensive leather seats. When she arrived at the estate, Morvana herself was waiting. The king is preparing, the seneschal said. I am to escort you to the gallery where you will watch the proceedings. I thought he wanted me there with him. He does, but court politics require careful staging. You will be revealed at the appropriate moment. Morvana led her through different halls this time, deeper into the estate. They passed other vampires, all of them pale and beautiful and cold-eyed. All of them stared at Delilah. She kept her spine straight and pretended she belonged. The gallery overlooked a massive hall. Delilah pressed against the railing and looked down at what had to be 200 vampires gathered below. They stood in clusters, all of them dressed in dark, expensive clothing, all of them radiating that same otherworldly presence Hale carried. At the far end of the hall, on a raised platform, sat a throne carved from black stone, empty for now. They gather by faction, Morvana murmured beside her. The traditionalists to the left, led by Lord Selvaris. The moderates in the center. The progressives, few as they are, to the right. Delilah studied the groups. The traditionalists were the largest, and the vampire at their center was beautiful in a sharp, dangerous way. White hair like Hale's, but his eyes were colder. He looked like he smiled with knives. That's Selvaris? Yes. He has spent the past 2 weeks consolidating power, expecting Hale to fail or flee. This gathering will determine the court's future. No pressure, then. Morvana almost smiled. The king has faced worse odds, but never with a human's encouragement. Trumpets sounded. The hall fell silent. Hale entered from a side door, and Delilah's breath caught. He wore black and deep crimson, formal robes that managed to look both ancient and modern. The crown sat on his white hair, perfectly positioned. He looked every inch the king, powerful and commanding and untouchable. But then he glanced up at the gallery, just for a moment, and his expression softened. He was still Hale, her regular customer who kept stale bread in a drawer. He took his place on the throne. His voice carried through the hall without effort. My court, my people, I have called you here to announce changes to how we will govern ourselves. Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Selvarus stepped forward, smooth and confident. My king, the court would hear what inspired this sudden reformation. The words were polite. The tone was mocking. Hale leaned forward slightly. A human waitress who saw that I was lonely and brought me bread. The murmurs turned to shocked silence. Every eye in the hall turned upward, searching the gallery. Delilah fought the urge to hide. A human, Selvarus said, drawing out the word, has influenced the king of the Eastern court. Yes. She reminded me that power without connection is merely isolation, that ruling without understanding those we rule is tyranny. Hale stood and the crowd shifted uneasily. For 3,000 years I have maintained distance. I have been the throne, not the man, and in doing so, I have failed you. You have kept us strong, someone called from the traditionalist faction. I have kept us stagnant, feared rather than trusted, united by authority rather than loyalty. He descended from the platform, walking into the crowd. Vampires stepped back, uncertain. That ends now. I will still rule, still make the decisions that must be made, but I will no longer do so from behind walls of tradition and distance. Selvarus moved to intercept him. And if the court disagrees with this new approach, then we will discuss it, argue it, find compromise. Hale met his cousin's eyes. Or you may challenge me directly, Selvarus, instead of plotting in shadows. The hall went deadly quiet. Selvarus stared at him. You would risk a challenge? Now, when you have shown weakness? I have shown humanity. There is a difference. Hale's voice dropped, went cold. But make no mistake, I am still your king, still the eldest of our line, still the vampire who has ruled longer than any other in our court's history. If you believe me weak, test that belief. I will not stop you. The two vampires faced each other, and Delilah realized she'd stopped breathing. This was a challenge, the kind that could end in violence. She gripped the gallery railing, wanting to call out, to stop it somehow. Morvana's hand covered hers. Wait. Watch. Selvarus held Hale's gaze for a long moment, then, slowly, deliberately, he knelt. I have no wish to challenge you, my king, only to ensure the court remains strong. Then help me make it stronger, through change, not stagnation. Hale offered his hand. Selvarus took it, allowing himself to be pulled to his feet. The gesture was heavy with meaning, with surrender and acceptance both. The rest of the court began to kneel, a wave of submission that spread through the hall. Hale let them stay down for a moment, establishing dominance. Then he gestured for them to rise. The first reform. This court will gather monthly, not yearly. You will have access to me, to voice concerns, and offer input. The second reform. We will create a council of representatives, chosen from all factions to advise on policy. He continued, laying out changes that sounded reasonable to Delilah's ears, but clearly shocked the vampires listening. More transparency, more communication, more collaboration. The traditionalists looked uncomfortable, but they listened. And finally, Hale said, returning to his throne, I will no longer rule alone. That got everyone's attention. Selvarus frowned. You intend to take a consort? Eventually, yes. But first I intend to learn how to be more than a king, to remember what it means to care for an individual, not just a court. He looked up at the gallery again. The human who reminded me of this will be under my protection. Any who harm her answer to me directly. Delilah felt every vampire in the hall staring at her again. She lifted her chin and stared back. The gathering continued for another hour, hammering out details and addressing concerns. Delilah watched Hale navigate it all with growing confidence, firm when he needed to be, flexible when he could afford it. This was the king his people needed, she realized, not distant and untouchable, but present and strong. When it finally ended and the vampires began to disperse, Morvana led her down to the hall. Hale was surrounded by nobles, all of them wanting his attention. He handled each with patience, but his eyes tracked Delilah's approach. When she reached him, he excused himself from the crowd and took her hand. "That was terrifying," she said, "for me as well, but necessary." "You did good." His smile was small and genuine. "I had a good teacher." Selvaris appeared beside them, studying Delilah with open curiosity. "So this is the human who changed a king's mind." "This is Delilah Chen," Hale said. "Delilah, my cousin, Lord Selvaris Obsidian." "Pleasure." Delilah kept her voice steady, even though Selvaris looked at her like she was an interesting insect. "The pleasure is mine. It is not often a mortal influences our politics." He tilted his head. "Tell me, Miss Chen, what do you gain from this arrangement?" "Nothing. I'm not here for gain. Everyone wants something. Maybe in your world. In mine, sometimes people are just kind." Selvaris laughed, a genuinely amused sound. "Hale, she is either very brave or very foolish. Either way, I begin to see the appeal." He inclined his head to both of them. "I will support your reforms, cousin. For now. But know that the traditionalists will not surrender their power easily. I expect nothing less." When Selvaris left, Hale's hand tightened on hers. "You handled him well." "I handle difficult customers every shift. He's just a difficult customer with fangs." "He is far more dangerous than that. But yes, the principle is similar." Other nobles approached, wanting introductions. Delilah shook hands with vampires who had lived centuries, who looked at her with everything from curiosity to disdain to grudging respect. Hale stayed beside her the entire time, his presence a shield and a statement both. By the time the hall emptied, Delilah was exhausted. Hale noticed, of course. "Come, I will have someone take you home. I have work in 6 hours. Then I will ensure you arrive in time to sleep first." He walked her to the car himself, Morvana trailing behind. Before Delilah climbed in, Hale caught her hand. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for everything. You did the hard part. I just brought bread. You brought hope. That is far more valuable." She squeezed his hand, very aware of Morvana watching. "See you tomorrow night, 2 a.m. I will be there." The pattern continued. Every night Hale came to the diner, but things were different now. He talked about court business with more energy, more engagement. He told her about the council forming, about Selvaris's cautious cooperation, about the small victories in opening up communication, and he talked about other things too. About books he was reading, about the modern world he was finally allowing himself to engage with, about questions he had about human life that 3,000 years hadn't answered. "Why do humans put such stock in mortal concepts like legacy?" he asked one night. "You live such brief lives, and yet you struggle to leave marks that will outlast you." "Because we don't get forever. We have to make what we do matter now." Delilah refilled his coffee. "You've got eternity. We've got decades if we're lucky. Of course, we're obsessed with making it count. But even your marks fade. Your buildings crumble. Your names are forgotten. Some are, but the important stuff sticks. Love, kindness, the way you make people feel, that echoes." She thought about her brother, about the sacrifices she made for him. "Maybe I won't be remembered in 100 years, but right now, today, I matter to the people I love. That's enough." Hale was quiet for a long moment. "You matter to me." The words hung between them, heavy with meaning. Delilah met his eyes. "You matter to me too." It was the first time either of them had said it out loud. The first acknowledgement that this thing between them had grown beyond king and waitress, beyond vampire and human. She saw the way he looked at her, protective and possessive and almost afraid, like he wanted to reach across the table but didn't know if he should. "I am 3,000 years old," he said quietly. "You are 23. The distance between us is insurmountable. Or it's just distance. People cross distance all the time. Not this kind." "Why not?" She leaned forward. "You're not human, fine. I get that. But you feel things, you care about things, you get lonely and tired and hopeful. That's human enough for me." And when you grow old and die, and I continue on, then you'll remember me. Keep me folded in cloth like the bread." She tried to smile, but the thought of him alone again, centuries from now, hurt. Or we figure something else out. There is a way for humans to become vampire, but it is not a gift to be given lightly. Her heart stuttered. "Is that an offer?" "No, not yet. Perhaps not ever." He looked down at his hands. "I would not trap you in immortality simply because I am selfish enough to want you to stay." "What if I wanted to stay?" "Then I would ask you to be certain, to understand what you would be giving up." Delilah thought about her life, about her tiny apartment and her brother and her barely sufficient job, about growing old, watching everyone she loved die, facing the same end herself, about the alternative, eternity with a vampire king who looked at her like she was the only real thing in his endless existence. "I don't know what I want yet," she admitted, "but I know I'm not ready to walk away." "Neither am I." They sat in the comfortable silence that had developed between them. Marcus was in the back, giving them privacy like he always did during these late-night meetings. The diner felt like its own little world, separate from vampire courts and human struggles both. "My birthday is next week," Delilah said. "I'll be 24, which feels deeply insignificant when I'm talking to someone who's 3,000. "It is not insignificant to you. That makes it significant." Hale tilted his head. "What do humans do for birthdays?" "Celebrate. Cake, presents, people telling you that you're old." "You are not old. I will be compared to now. That's how aging works." He almost smiled. "I wish to give you a gift. What would you like?" "You don't have to do that." "I am aware. I wish to regardless." Delilah thought about it, about what she needed versus what she wanted. "My brother's medical bills. If you could help with those, it would take the biggest weight off my shoulders." Hale's expression went soft. "Done. What else?" "That's not enough?" "That is a necessity I should have addressed weeks ago. I'm asking what you want, not what you need." She looked at him at the way he watched her with complete focus, like nothing else in the world existed. "Spend the day with me. Not the night, not in the diner. Actual daytime. I cannot go into sunlight." "I know, but there are places that block it out. Museums, theaters, the underground market downtown." She wanted to see him in her world, in spaces that were hers instead of his. "Just a few hours where you're not the king and I'm not the waitress, where we're just two people spending time together." He reached across the table and took her hand. "I would like that very much." Her birthday fell on her day off. Hale sent a car for her at noon, and Delilah dressed in her nicest clothes, which still weren't very nice. When she arrived at the estate, he was waiting at the door. He wore modern clothes for the first time since she'd known him. Dark jeans, a black shirt, a coat that managed to look both casual and expensive. Without the formal robes and crown, he looked younger, almost human. "You clean up nice," she said. "As do you." They took his car into the city, a driver handling the navigation while they sat in the back. Hale looked out the window like he was seeing everything for the first time, fascinated by the mundane details of daylight life happening around them. Their first stop was the museum. The natural history wing was dimly lit, perfect for vampire eyes. Delilah watched him study the dinosaur skeletons, the ancient artifacts, the displays about human evolution. "I remember when these were alive," he said, gesturing to a woolly mammoth reconstruction. "The mammoth?" "No, but the humans who hunted them. I was young then, newly turned. The world was ice and survival." She tried to imagine it, couldn't really. The scope of his existence was too vast. They wandered through exhibits, and she told him about school field trips, about learning history from books instead of living through it. He listened with genuine interest, asking questions, making observations that came from an immortal's perspective. In the ancient civilizations wing, he stopped in front of a display about vampire mythology. "Now, they have most of it wrong," he said. "We were never afraid of garlic. That is absurd." "What about crosses?" "Symbols only have the power we give them. A cross is wood and metal, nothing more." "Stakes through the heart?" "Would kill anyone, vampire or human." She leaned against him slightly, comfortable in his presence. "So what actually hurts you?" "Sunlight, as you know. Decapitation. Fire, though we heal from most burns. Starvation if we go too long without blood. He looked down at her. And apparently, human waitresses who give away free bread. That last one sounds dangerous. Quite? They had lunch at a restaurant that had private booths in the basement level. Hale ordered wine and watched her eat, content to sit in the dimness and talk. She told him about her childhood, about her parents who'd passed when she was 18, leaving her to raise her younger brother alone, about struggling to make ends meet, about the constant fear that she wasn't enough. "You are more than enough," Hale said. "Your brother is fortunate to have you." "I'm fortunate to have him. He's the reason I keep going most days." "I understand that. My court is my reason, even when they exhaust me." After lunch, they went to the underground market, a sprawling network of shops and stalls beneath the city. It was dark and crowded and wonderfully chaotic. Delilah dragged Hale from booth to booth, showing him weird modern inventions, handmade crafts, street food he couldn't eat but seemed fascinated by anyway. She bought him a small carved figure from one stall, a wooden vampire that looked nothing like the real thing. "For your collection of bread," she said. "Now you can have something else to keep." He looked at the silly little carving like it was precious. "Thank you." They walked through the market hand in hand, and Delilah felt almost normal, like they were just two people on a date, not a vampire king and a struggling waitress. Like the complications didn't exist for a few hours. As the afternoon faded toward evening, they returned to the car. Hale seemed reluctant to let her go. "I have one more gift," he said. "At the estate, if you will come." "Of course." Back at the estate, he led her to a different wing, one she hadn't seen before. He opened a door to reveal a library that made her breath catch. Books lined every wall from floor to ceiling, thousands of them, ancient and modern mixed together. "I thought you might appreciate this," he said. "You are welcome here whenever you like. Morvana will ensure you have access." Delilah walked into the room, trailing her fingers along the spines. "This is incredible. Many are first editions. Some are the only surviving copies of texts thought lost. I have been collecting for 3,000 years. She turned to face him. "You're giving me access to your library. I am giving you a reason to return, beyond the diner, beyond obligation." He moved closer. "I'm asking you to be part of my life, Delilah, truly part of it. I already am. Then I'm asking for more, for your time, your presence, your—" He stopped, seemed to struggle with the word. "My heart?" she offered quietly. "Yes." She closed the distance between them and took his hands. "You already have that. You've had it since you left me your crown, and I realized you were just as lonely as I was." He cupped her face, gentle despite his strength. "I want to court you properly, by human standards, by vampire standards, by whatever standards matter to you. I want to give you time to be certain, to understand what being with me would mean. And then? And then, if you still want me, I will give you eternity. I will turn you, make you vampire, give you the time to stay with me." His thumb brushed her cheek. "But only if you are certain. Only if you choose it freely." Delilah's heart was racing. This was a proposal, she realized, not of marriage, but of forever, of transformation and commitment and a future that stretched beyond anything she'd imagined. "I need time," she said. "Not because I don't want you, but because this is huge, and I need to think about everything it means." "Take all the time you need. I will wait." She kissed him then, rising on her toes to press her lips to his. He made a startled sound, then pulled her closer, careful of his strength. The kiss was gentle and desperate both, 3,000 years of loneliness meeting 23 years of struggling to survive. When they finally broke apart, his eyes had gone red gold, the vampire in him rising to the surface. "I should take you home," he said, voice rough, "before I forget to be a gentleman." "I don't think I'd mind." "I would. When I make love to you, it will be because you have chosen this fully, not in a moment of emotion." The promise in his words made heat pool in her stomach. But he was right. She needed time to think, to process, to be sure. He drove her home himself that night, walking her to her apartment door like a proper date. Before she went inside, he caught her hand and kissed her knuckles. "Happy birthday, Delilah Chen." "Best one I've ever had." The next few weeks were a blur. Delilah continued working at the diner, but her nights off were spent at the estate. Hale showed her more of his world, introduced her to vampires who were becoming almost friendly, taught her about the court politics he navigated. She attended council meetings in the gallery, watching him implement the reforms they'd discussed, seeing him grow into this new version of leadership. And they talked about everything. About her fears of losing herself to immortality, about his fear of trapping her in a life she might regret, about what their future could look like, what compromises they'd need to make, what joys they might find. Her brother noticed the change in her, noticed she was happier, less stressed. She told him about the medical bills being paid off by an anonymous donor, watched his relief and felt guilty for the lie. But she couldn't explain Hale yet, couldn't put into words what was happening between them. 2 months after her birthday, Salvaris called for a formal challenge. Delilah heard about it from Morvana, who appeared at the diner mid-shift looking grim. "The king requires your presence. Lord Salvaris has invoked the old laws. He challenges Hale's fitness to rule." Delilah's blood went cold. What does that mean? Trial by combat. Tonight, before the full court. If Hale loses, Salvaris takes the throne. She yanked off her apron and told Marcus she had an emergency. The ride to the estate felt endless. When she arrived, Morvana rushed her to Hale's chambers. He was preparing, dressed in fighting leathers that looked ancient and deadly. When he saw her, some of the tension left his face. "You did not need to come." "Yes, I did. What happened?" "I thought Salvaris was cooperating." He was, but the traditionalists have been pressuring him, and he sees an opportunity. Hale fastened a blade at his hip. "The reforms have been successful. Too successful. The old families fear losing their power entirely. Can you beat him?" "Yes, but it will be brutal. And it will damage the fragile peace we have built." Delilah grabbed his arm. "Then don't fight. Find another way." "There is no other way. He has issued formal challenge. If I refuse, I forfeit." "That's insane. That is our law." She wanted to scream, wanted to find Salvaris and shake him until he saw sense. But there was no time. The court was gathering, and Hale had to face his cousin in combat that could end in death. The hall had been transformed. The throne was gone, replaced by an open circle marked in white. Vampires lined the walls, hundreds of them, all watching with hungry eyes. This was entertainment for them, Delilah realized with disgust. A spectacle. Morvana led her to the gallery again. From above, she could see everything. Hale entered from one side, Salvaris from the other. They met in the center of the circle. "This is your last chance to withdraw," Hale said, voice carrying through the hall. "And let you weaken our court further? I think not, cousin." Salvaris drew his blade. "I challenge you for the crown and the throne, by blood and tradition." "So be it." They moved so fast Delilah could barely track it. Blades clashed, bodies blurred. Hale was larger, stronger, but Salvaris was quick and vicious. They fought with a brutality that made her sick, cutting and bleeding and healing, almost as fast as they were wounded. The court watched in silence, tracking every move. Salvaris got inside Hale's guard and scored a deep cut across his chest. Hale retaliated with a slash that opened his cousin's shoulder. They circled each other, bleeding, both breathing hard. "You've gone soft," Salvaris said. "Letting a human influence you, it makes you weak." "It makes me better than I was." "It makes you vulnerable." Salvaris lunged. Hale sidestepped fast as thought and brought his blade down. It should have been a killing blow, should have taken Salvaris's head clean off. Hale pulled it at the last second. The blade bit into his cousin's shoulder instead, driving him to his knees. Hale kicked the weapon from Salvaris's hand and pressed his own blade to his throat. "Yield," Hale commanded. The hall held its breath. Salvaris stared up at him, shock clear on his face. "You pulled the strike. You could have ended this." "I could have, but you are my cousin, my blood, and I am trying to build a court based on something other than fear and death." Hale's blade didn't waver. "Yield, or I will finish this, but know that I would prefer not to." Salvaris looked at him for a long moment. Then, slowly, he bowed his head. "I yield." Hale stepped back, lowering his blade. He offered his hand to his cousin. Salvaris stared at it, then took it, allowing himself to be pulled to his feet. "You are a fool," Salvaris said, but there was something like respect in his voice. "Perhaps, but I am still your king." The court erupted into noise. Some vampires looked approving, others shocked, a few clearly angry. But Hale stood in the center of it all, bloodied and victorious, and waited for them to quiet. "This ends now," he said. "The old ways of ruling through fear and violence are done. We will be better than this. We will be more." He looked around the hall. "Any who cannot accept this are free to leave the court. I will not stop you, but I will also not tolerate further challenges to undermine the peace we are building." No one moved. No one spoke. Hale's eyes found the gallery, found Delilah. "A human reminded me that kindness is not weakness, that caring for individuals makes you stronger, not more vulnerable. I intend to prove that truth, even if it takes another 3,000 years." He left the circle, left Salvaris standing there, and walked out of the hall. Delilah ran to meet him, Morvana abandoning protocol to let her through. She found him in his chambers, already healing but still covered in blood. She threw her arms around him without thinking. "You idiot! You beautiful, stupid idiot!" He held her carefully. "I'm sorry you had to witness that. I'm sorry you had to do that, but I'm proud of you for how you ended it. Mercy may cost me in the long run, or it might save you." She pulled back to look at him. "Salvaris respected what you did. I saw it on his face." "Perhaps." He touched her cheek, leaving a smear of blood. "I am trying to be worthy of you." "You already are." She helped him clean up, washing away the blood, checking wounds that were already sealing. When he was clean and dressed in fresh clothes, she made him sit on the edge of the bed. "I've made my decision," she said. He went very still. "Delilah, let me finish. I've thought about what becoming vampire would mean, about giving up sunlight and normal food and the life I know, about living forever, watching the world change, becoming something other than human." She took his hands. "And I've decided that I want it. I want forever with you. I want to help you build this new kind of court. I want to be your partner, your queen, your everything." "You are certain?" "Completely." He pulled her into his lap, holding her like she was breakable. "Then I will give you eternity. But not tonight. Tonight I want you to rest, to be absolutely sure when you wake tomorrow." "I'm sure now." "Humor me." She kissed him, deep and certain. "Tomorrow then. Turn me tomorrow and we'll figure out the rest together." They spent the night talking, planning, dreaming about the future. When dawn came, Delilah felt no hesitation. She loved him, loved what they were building together, loved the idea of forever stretching ahead. The turning was done at sunset, witnessed by Morvana and the inner council. Hale bit her wrist, drained her to the edge of death, then gave her his blood to drink. It tasted like copper and smoke and power. The change was agony. She felt her body dying, rebuilding, transforming into something new. Hale held her through all of it, whispering reassurance, anchoring her to consciousness. When she finally opened her eyes, the world looked different, sharper, clearer, full of details she'd never noticed. She could hear heartbeats in the walls, smell blood and stone and ancient wood. And she was strong, stronger than she'd ever imagined. Hale helped her stand. She was shaky, newborn in this form, but he steadied her. "How do you feel?" She looked at her hands, pale now like his, and felt the power thrumming through her veins. Alive. More alive than before. "You are beautiful." She caught her reflection in a mirror and barely recognized herself. White hair, pale skin, red gold eyes. She looked like him now, like she belonged to his world. "I'm a vampire. You are my queen, if you will have the title." She turned to him. "On one condition, we keep bringing bread to the diner." He laughed, genuine and free. "We will bring bread wherever you wish." The coronation was held a month later, after Delilah had learned to control her new strength and hunger. The court gathered again, but this time there was no violence, no challenge, just ceremony. Hale placed a crown on her head, a mate to his own, wrought in silver where his was gold. "Queen Delilah Obsidian," he said, loud enough for all to hear. "Partner to the king, voice of the people, bridge between human and vampire." The court bowed. Even Salvaris, who had become a cautious ally, bent his knee. After the ceremony, they held a feast. And at Delilah's insistence, every table had baskets of warm bread. "A new tradition," she explained when vampires asked, to remember that kindness feeds the soul even when the body requires blood. Some thought it strange. Others understood. The bread became a symbol of the new court, of the changes Hale and Delilah were implementing together. That night, when the celebration ended and they retired to their chambers, Hale pulled her close. "I never imagined this," he said, "a future that felt worth living." "Me neither. I thought I'd work at that diner until I died, never having more than survival. And now? Now I have everything." She kissed him. "And I didn't even have to sell your crown on eBay," he groaned. "You will never let me forget that threat. Never. It's part of our story now. Their story. A vampire king and a waitress who gave him free bread, who saw his loneliness and met it with kindness, who changed each other, built something new together, and found love in the space between immortal and mortal worlds. Years passed, decades. The court continued to evolve, growing more open, more connected. Delilah became beloved among both vampires and the humans who slowly learned of their existence. She was the queen who remembered what it meant to struggle, to be ordinary, to need simple kindness. And every year on her birthday, they returned to the Paradise Diner. It had changed ownership twice, but Hale had quietly bought the building to ensure it stayed open. They sat at table 7, and Delilah ordered coffee and bread, and they talked about the year that had passed. "Do you miss it?" Hale asked during one of these visits, 100 years after her turning. "Being human?" Delilah thought about it, about sunlight and mortality and the life she'd left behind. "Sometimes, but I don't regret choosing this, choosing you. Nor do I regret finding you. You didn't find me. I found you, sad and lonely in my section. You saved me. We saved each other." And it was true. He had given her forever, security, a purpose beyond survival. She had given him connection, warmth, a reason to change. Together, they had built something neither could have managed alone. The breadbasket sat between them, warm and perfect. Hale still couldn't eat it, but he touched it anyway, fingertips gentle on the crust. Some kindnesses, after all, weren't about consumption. They were about being seen, being known, being remembered. And in a world of immortals who often forgot what mattered, that made all the difference. They left the diner hand in hand, queen and king, partners in every sense. The crown he'd once left as a tip now sat in a place of honor in their chambers, a reminder of the night everything changed, the night a waitress slipped him free bread and taught a vampire king how to hope. Their forever had only just begun.